Give it just a couple of seconds there to pop in. And here we go. Streaming live from the GCT Network studios for the Secret Fire podcast. We are just a moment or two from starting the show. This is episode number 17, where we're going to finish up chapter 12, Flight to the Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the stopwatch already. We have video streaming. Let me go ahead and send out this quick tweet here. I hope I spelled everything correctly. Probably did not. One last check. Secret Fire Podcast. And there we go. Transition here. You gentlemen ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get the stopwatch over here. So we can just count down, do the big countdown.
I had to decide which button I needed to press.
Swatting a fly.
Yeah.
Broadcasting from the stone. No.
Broadcasting from the stone?
Yeah, Stone Trolls. Broadcasting. No, I need to record. Huzzah! We almost had no podcast. Broadcasting from the Stone Trolls in the Trollshaws, Middle Earth, this is the Secret Fire Podcast, sent to burn at the heart of the world, episode number 17. I'm Michael.
I'm Brenden.
I'm Micah.
On this episode, Flight to the Ford. For real this time, because last time we didn't make it past these stone trolls here. We invite you to come along, join the fellowship, become a servant of the Secret Fire each week here on the GCT Network.
This is your Great Commission transmission.
Micah, was that intro better than the last time?
Yeah.
You really gave me the business last time on that.
Not, I just...
Gave
small
you
critique,
the business?
okay?
What? Gave you the business?
Yeah,
What year is this?
It's an old-timey term, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So we have no...
As
I'm
all
helping
his
you
terms
out.
are.
I always help you out and give you the opportunity to insult me and
Yeah.
participate and engage in your ageism.
See that, and that's what I like about you.
Yeah. It's like the straight man and the fall guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gentlemen, we are here around these stone trolls, and this is the final chapter in book 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring. Now, you know, I was listening to Rob Inglis, the voice of Tolkien, as we consider him here at the Secret Fire podcast. Starting the next chapter, he called it Chapter 1. Book 2, Chapter 1. Should we follow suit? Because we're all reading out of a single volume, Lord of the Rings. Or should we just use the naming convention of the next chapter as Chapter 13?
It sounds cooler to do the
Book 2?
Book 2.
Chapter 1.
Okay.
I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah.
I am too.
Yes.
I'm just trying not to cause any confusion.
Look, we're in the professor's world. Whatever professor says...
Hey!
Whatever professor says...
How could I argue with that?
Yeah.
How could I argue with
Although
that?
he would argue with that and say it's not his world. He's just writing about it.
He's just observing it, isn't
Yeah.
he?
Well, we say books are the physical thing. Really, it's a volume. So Volume 2 would be Two Towers. And
That's
Volume 1 is
right.
Fellowship of the Ring.
Right.
So.
Here we are, past
okay.
the last bridge. We are in between the rivers Horwell and the Bruinen, or Loudwater, in the Trollshaws. If you're watching on our video on twitch.tv/Secret Fire Podcast, I have a map pulled up so that we can see exactly where we are. Where did we leave off last episode? Besides with a fantastic song by Brocelion.
Well, also Sam Gamgee.
That's correct.
We left off with Sam's Rhyme of the Troll, or Is that what it's technically? I don't even know if it has a technical name, but he has this song. And the last, just to put our mind back into it, we heard the story of a character named Tom, not Tom Bombadil.
Well, wait a second.
Or is it?
So I'm looking here, and apparently because I have yet to read, I'm admitting before God and everybody, all the listeners, that I have yet to read The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, where the stone troll is contained. So as I'm looking on the Tolkien Gateway wiki here, says that, here we are. We know that we're in the Third Age. 3018 is the year. Sam Gamgee composed the humorous poem, The Stone Troll, about Tom Bombadil visiting an old troll gnawing on the bones of Tim. So it's Tom. We might have to reread this. Or just challenge listeners to go back and listen to the last episode.
But was Tom missing a leg?
No, it was Tim.
But at the end of the...
Oh,
at the end of the poem here, it says Tom's leg is gone since home he came, and his bootless foot is lasting lame.
Well,
it says Tom, so
we need to investigate the adventures of Tom Bombadil. What we need to do is that's in the Tales from the Perilous Realm book collection.
Now we talked briefly about how, and we may have done this on the show or not, I can't remember, but we did talk about how elves, when they eventually do die, they can still choose to come back.
Well, we're going to discuss that just a little bit later on in this episode. Okay, so hold that thought, or continue on. What did you have to say? What does that have to do with Tom's leg?
Well, not to interrupt, but in my book it says Tom's leg is game.
What did I say? Gone?
Gone.
I'm sorry. No, that is what it says.
Okay.
So
glasses.
You got hey, try them.
Someone else is getting old.
Oh, it's man. Game. So busted up, messed up a little bit.
Tom's leg is game.
Yeah.
But it's lasting lame. But was he limp? Maybe that's why he was skipping.
Do you skip when you have a bad foot?
Yeah, so I don't have to put pressure on it.
See, we always say chilling on the good foot.
Who says that?
Nobody says that.
Boy.
Nobody in this century. I mean,
wow.
We say.
Okay, well, there's some mystery, and we'll get to that when we when we eventually make it to the adventures of Tom Bombadil.
Yeah. Then, just shortly after the song, they make their way around to this hidden little treasure trove of the trolls. There, said Mary, that must be the stone that marked the place where the troll's gold was hidden. How much is left of Bilbo's share, I wonder, Frodo?
Oh, Here we go.
And Frodo looked at the stone and wished that Bilbo had brought home no treasure more perilous nor less easy to part with. None at all, he said. Bilbo gave it all away. He told me he did not feel it was really his, as it came from robbers. So we've got that going. Further on, they were beginning to look out for a place off the road where they could camp for the night, when they heard a sound that brought sudden fear back into their hearts.
Oh, no!
The noise of hoofs behind them. They looked back, and they could not see far because of the many windings and rollings of the road, and as quickly as they could, they scrambled off the beaten way and up into the deep heather and bilberry brushwood on the slopes above, until they came to a small patch of thick-growing hazels. And as they peered out from among the bushes, they could see the road, faint and gray in the failing light, some 30 feet below them. The sound of hoofs drew nearer, and they were going fast, with a light clippity-clippity-clap. Clippity-clippity-clip, rather. Not clap, clip.
What is the difference?
Who knows?
Okay.
The professor.
Yes.
Then faintly, as if it were blown away from them by the breeze, they seemed to catch a dim ringing, as of small bells tinkling.
That doesn't sound like a Black Rider.
That's exactly what Frodo says.
That was Frodo said.
That's exactly what Frodo says. That doesn't sound like a Black Rider. Like a Black Rider's horse, said Frodo, listening intently. The other hobbits agreed. hopefully that it did not. But they all remained full of suspicion. They had been in fear of pursuit for so long that any sound from behind seemed ominous and unfriendly. But Strider, now leaning forward, stooped to the ground with a hand to his ear and a look of joy on his face.
I can see it.
Mm-hmm. Then Strider goes on ahead, and he has this elvish exchange, and I have no idea how to pronounce this.
Well, all that we are concerned with is Megovanen, because us Lotro players, we hear that every time we go.
Megovanen,
Yes.
how may I help you?
Every time we make our way to Kellendim and
Kellendim.
yeah,
I call it Celadin.
no, Hardsea,
Hard.
Hardsea.
Isn't that drink in the box? Hard C.
All right, Megovanen, his speech
Oh, that's high C.
and clear ringing voice left no doubt in their hearts. The rider was of elven folk.
Yay.
No others that dwelt in the wide world had voices so fair to hear. But there seemed to be a note of haste or fear in his call, and they saw that he was now speaking quickly and urgently to Strider.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the notes.
Soon Strider beckoned to them, and the hobbits left the bushes and hurried down to the road. "This is Glorfindel, who dwells in the house of Elrond," said Strider. "Hail and well met at last," said the Elf Lord to Frodo. "I was sent from Rivendell to look for you. We feared that you were in danger upon the road." "Then Gandalf has reached Rivendell," cried Frodo, joyfully.
No. He had not when I departed, but that was 9 days ago, answered Glorfindel. Elrond received news that troubled him. Some of my kindred, journeying from your land beyond the
Barad-dûin?
Barad-dûin, learned that things were amiss, and sent messages as swiftly as they could. They said that the Nine were abroad, capital N.
The Nine.
Were abroad, and that you were astray, bearing a great burden without guidance, for Gandalf had not returned. There are few, even in Rivendell, that can ride openly against the Nine, but such as there were, Elrond sent out north, west, and south. It was thought that you might turn far aside to avoid pursuit and become lost in the wilderness. Well, thankfully they didn't, because they had Aragorn. They had Strider.
Yeah, their guide.
Their guide, that's right. So we're meeting Glorfindel. Gandalf, that bit of sad news, has not made it to Rivendell yet.
Do you know that?
Or at least he hasn't when Glorfindel left.
Do you know that Glorfindel has much in common with Gandalf?
Besides the G?
Yes, besides the G.
Like, what are you getting
Let's talk just a moment about Glorfindel.
Okay.
We can't get too deep into the lore, because this will come especially when we are reading about the fall of Gondolin and things like that. So, unfinished tales and such. So we're just going to do just skim over, give some information enough for people to say, whoa, okay? Because we know that in the film, they put Arwen in place of Glorfindel.
Yeah.
In the 1978 animated Lord of the Rings, they put Legolas here. Okay?
Orlando Bloom.
Because Glorfindel is important in the literature. He's not important in the films.
Well, guess who else is important in the literature?
Who?
Everybody.
Yes.
So,
And thankfully, the BBC production, the 1981 BBC radio dramatization, they put Glorfindel in there.
Hey, there you go.
And so there was a great little scene. But Glorfindel means golden-haired. That's the Sindarin.
Oh, okay.
He was one of the mightiest elves of Middle-earth in the Third Age. In the Third Age, do you know when this elf was born? During the years of the trees. This is when the two trees, where the lights of the Silmarils came from, the two trees were the lights of Aman. So we're talking long, long ago. and he died. He
But
what? Well,
he died.
he
but...
did die, but he came back.
Oh
Do you know how he died?
no.
At the hands of a Balrog. Oh.
Wait. Okay.
Wowza.
Wait. Okay. Are there more than one Balrog?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And Balrogs are, we believe that Balrogs are also Maya, or of the Maiar.
Yeah, the lesser.
Yes, so they are of the same kind as Sauron.
Well, I think Sauron's like tier 2.
Well, okay, but he's still Maiar.
Okay.
Okay, and Gandalf, all the wizards, the Astari. Okay, but anyway, so
The servants of the.
no, they're the lesser of the
Oh, okay.
of the Valar, right? You
So
have
wait,
the
what's-
Ainur and the Maiar.
But what was the other word? The Astari.
The
Astari?
Astari is
Astari?
what the wizards are,
Yeah.
because they've been given a mission, the 5 Astari.
Yeah.
So the mission that was given to those Maiar makes them Astari. It's like wizards. It's kind of almost if I'm reading correctly and I'm thinking straight, it's kind of like now you are Astari because you have a special mission.
Okay.
So they're not a separate category of their own?
No,
All right.
Okay. That makes sense.
does it?
Let me make sure. Okay. So Gandalf is a servant of the Secret Fire.
Yes, he
Right.
is.
Okay. That
He is a servant of that Holy Spirit, as j.r.r. Tolkien claims.
well, we're not getting there yet.
okay.
But isn't that synonymous with Astari or
No.
Astari?
No,
So then, what is Astari?
they're wizards.
So okay, so then if you are a
They
wizard,
were Maiar that said, now you are going to go and be wizards.
okay, so then wait, what's a Maiar?
Is a lesser of the
Lesser
angelic
what?
beings, the holy ones.
The Valar. No,
No,
the Ainur.
No, the Ainur.
I'm getting lost.
Think
in
of it
termino-
like
Ah!
there's Greek gods and then there's demigods.
Okay.
Think of it like that. The Greek
Okay.
gods would be the higher
Ainur.
tier, Ainur, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Maiar would be the demigods or whatever.
Okay. So Maiar isn't necessarily bad.
No,
They-
Maiar is very good,
Okay. For some reason, I was thinking Maiar.
but they can choose to be bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So if they choose to be part of the Discord.
Yes.
Okay.
Well put.
Now I'm tracking. Okay.
Are you?
I think so.
All
We'll
right.
find out.
So that's just one way that that he is like Gandalf. In fact, he was here. Let me scooch down here. Let me get back over here to my notes.
So wait, then what's the mission of the Astari?
The Astari was to assist in the war against Sauron, and that's why once it was over, once it was won.
The war that hasn't happened yet.
Really,
in the books.
technically speaking, and now you're asking me to remember things that I haven't said in many years. This goes back to years ago when Micah and I were doing Middle Earth Minutes. They were one of the reasons why you don't see Gandalf just constantly showing his full force and full powers, because that was not his mission. His mission was to encourage. He was like a Paraclete,
Okay.
and he was to encourage and to support and help and help men or the inhabitants of Middle Earth, the free peoples, to do the right thing
Okay.
in order for them to defeat. They had to defeat.
You mean he helped them by encouraging them to do it themselves and not by
Yes.
doing it for them?
Yes,
Man, that's weird.
you don't like
Okay,
that?
that was sarcasm. That was sarcasm.
Okay, so here we are in this in the fight, and we're getting, he's helping Tuar, and he's already associated with Gandalf. I mean, with Elrond at this time. But we have the fall of Gondolin in this fight, and then here we have dragons coming and destroying things, and Balrogs, and here's Glorfindel stabbing this Balrog in the belly, but as the Balrog fell over this cliff, it reached out and grabbed his long golden hair, pulling him back down
Wait a
over
second.
the edge of the cliff.
Dang.
Okay. Isn't that
That
interesting?
seems to be the favorite technique of any Balrog.
As they're falling.
Hey,
yeah.
they get the last word, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Well, Glorfindel's spirit passed to the halls of Mandos, where he waited with the spirits of the other Noldor who had died during their war against Morgoth. But because of Glorfindel's noble actions in life, his reluctance at the exile, and his furthering of the purposes of the Valar by saving Tuar and Idril, he was re-embodied after only a short time. See, the elves go to the halls of Mandos. Men go to the halls of Mandos as well, but the elves, they will eventually. They just wait, and eventually they will be re-embodied. The men is the great mystery, the great gift of.
They get to go straight to Eru.
They will.
Iluvatar.
Yes.
Iluvatar, yeah.
Yeah.
Eru, Iluvatar, yeah.
And so anyhow, he had redeemed himself and was purged of any guilt. This is kind of like purgatory,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not Catholic. None of us are, so we aren't
I was going
fully-
to say Tolkien's Catholicism showing. so.
Yes, absolutely. And so not only did his sacrifice get him an early pardon, it earned him great powers so that he was almost an equal to the Maiar. He got such great powers that he's almost... So not only is he like Gandalf in that he was defeated by a Balrog pulling him over the edge of a cliff with him, but when he was sent back, he was given such great powers that he was almost an equal to the Maiar, which Gandalf is a Maiar. So okay, I thought that was some interesting things, and then
Okay.
and then he comes back in the Second Age. Really, most likely he came. Some people say at about 1200 Second Age. Others say 1600, which is when the blue wizards came. There were 5 wizards, Istari, and the 2 blues. You know, I can't recall their names. It's in the Hobbit film. They went to the east, and we don't know what happened to them.
But
Nobody knows.
what's east? That's the mountain.
No way.
That's not.
East.
No.
Rune.
East.
Yeah, there's lots east that we don't know.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
We're dealing with a
I
particular
thought
area.
Mordor was the farthest east you could go.
And then of course he lived until
Is it?
No.
No. Okay.
he lived until well, he's in the Third Age here, right? He spent several hundred years in Valinor, and for an unknown reason, near Third Age 1000, he landed with this other person who was on a similar mission of his own. Over time, as the few remaining great elves of Middle-earth took ship to Aman, or fell one by one, only Galadriel, Celeborn, Elrond, and Círdan were left of the wise. Glorfindel took a more active role, leading the elven forces in the Battle of Fornost. So anyway, we'll learn more about him. But I just thought that would be interesting for you on your first meeting to know 2 ways that he is like Gandalf.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Moving on out then.
Moving on up to the east side. I have that.
No.
Oh.
No.
Hey, earlier I needed Michael's help to get a song out of my head.
And I helped him.
He helped me
I can
By
help.
putting a new one in.
by putting like 5, 6 different new ones in
I
there.
can help.
Yep. Let's see. Glorfindel continues. It was my lot to take the road where I came to the bridge of... Oh, goodness. Methethiel.
Sure.
Yeah,
Methaethil?
Yeah, Methaethil.
Methaethil. And left a token there nigh 7 days ago.
Oh, the barrel.
The barnacle stone. Yeah.
Barnacle build the...
The heart of Tefiti. That's what I imagined when I read that.
Barrel the stone of Glorfindel. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay.
What?
Barnacle build the sailor.
No.
The barrel
No,
stone
what?
of Glorfindel.
3 of the servants of Sauron were upon the bridge, but they withdrew, and I pursued them westward. I came also upon 2 others, but they turned away southward. Since then, I have searched your trail. 2 days ago I found it, and followed it over the bridge, and today I marked where you descended from the hills again. But come, there is no time for further news. Since you are here, we must risk the peril of the road and go.
It's time to get back on the road.
With Viggo Mortensen himself.
Yes.
There are 5 behind us, and when they find your trail upon the road, they will ride after us like the wind. And they are not at all. They are not all. Where the other 4 may be, I do not know. I fear that we may find the fort is already held against us. Interesting that same phraseology was used by Strider some time ago. Maybe in this chapter or the previous chapter. While Glorfindel was speaking, the shades of evening deepened, and Frodo felt a great weariness come over him. Ever since the sun began to sink, the mist before his eyes had darkened, and he felt that a shadow was coming between him and the faces of his friends. Now pain assailed him, and he felt cold. He swayed, clutching at Sam's arm. "My master is sick and wounded," Sam said angrily. "He can't go on riding after nightfall. He needs rest." And Glorfindel caught Frodo as he sank to the ground, and taking him gently in his arms, as he looked in his face with grave anxiety.
Now, when you see a powerful being like Glorfindel, has his face shows grave anxiety, something's bad. This is bad. This wound is not good.
And he has a hunch. Strider gives him the hilt of the blade that caused that wound, and Glorfindel says, "There are evil things written on this hilt. Though maybe your eyes cannot see them, keep it, Aragorn, till we reach the house of Elrond. But be wary, and handle it as little as you may. Alas, the wounds of this weapon are beyond my skill to heal. I will do what I can, but all the more I urge you now to go on without rest."
Stop. So Strider says these wounds are beyond my skill to heal. Now Glorfindel says these wounds are grave, beyond my skill to heal. Who are they wanting to get Frodo to? Elrond. What does that tell you about Elrond?
Yeah.
You know, I never thought of that before. What does that tell us about the power of Elrond? We know how powerful Strider is, and he's continuing to grow on his story arc in his powers. But Glorfindel is nearly as powerful as the Maiar, and he defers to Elrond, half-elven. There's something. If you take nothing else away from this chapter and our discussion on it, ponder that. Wow.
Yeah.
And that'll actually tie into some of the thoughts I want to share later on in the episode. Okay.
Well, there you go. Glorfindel searched the wound on Frodo's shoulder with his fingers, and his face grew graver, as if what he learned disquieted him. But Frodo felt the chill lessen in his side and arm. A little warmth crept down from his shoulder to his hand, and the pain grew easier.
There's some power from that.
So even just by touching Frodo, by touching that scar, the wound, Frodo's already feeling some sort of relief. I think that's pretty cool. The dusk of evening seemed to grow lighter about him, as if a cloud had been withdrawn. He saw his friends' faces more clearly again, and a measure of new hope and strength returned.
"You shall ride my horse," said Glorfindel. "I will shorten the stirrups up to the saddle skirts, and you must sit as tight as you can. But you need not fear. My horse will not let any rider fall that I command him to bear. His pace is light and smooth, and if danger presses too near, he will bear you away with a speed that even the black steeds of the enemy cannot rival." "No, he will not," said Frodo. "I shall not ride him if I am to be carried off to Rivendell or anywhere else, leaving my friends behind in danger." Glorfindel smiled. "I doubt very much," he said, "if your friends would be in danger if you were not with them. The pursuit would follow you and leave us in peace, I think. It is you, Frodo, and that which you bear, that brings us all peril." just want to throw in a thought there. Remember, we're looking, thanks to Peter Craiff, we're looking at Frodo as the priestly office of that prophet, priest, and king triumvirate, and really like a scapegoat. What does the scapegoat bear? Sin.
Yeah.
And he's running into the wilderness. Wow.
And to that, Frodo had no answer, and he was persuaded to mount Glorfindel's. How do you say it?
Glorfindel.
He won't say Glorfindel. He was persuaded to mount
Glorfindel. Glorfindel.
Glorfindel.
Glorfindel.
Hakuna Matata.
Findel.
What a wonderful book. Hey.
It's the barrel stone of Glorfindel.
Oh. And he was persuaded to mount Glorfindel's white horse. The pony was laden instead with a great part of the other's burdens. See, the pony was laden instead. Okay. So we still got Bill Ferny's pony here. Yeah, okay. The pony was laden instead with a great part of the other's burdens, so that it now marched lighter, and for a time made good speed. But the hobbits began to find it hard to keep up with the swift, tireless feet of the elf. On he led them into the mouth of darkness, and still on under the deep clouded night. There was neither star nor moon. Not until the gray of dawn did he allow them to halt. Pippin and Merry and Sam were by that time nearly asleep on their stumbling legs, and even Strider seemed by the sag of his shoulders to be weary. Frodo sat upon the horse in a dark dream. That's gotta be bad. Yeah. That's gotta be bad. They cast themselves down in the heather a few yards from the roadside and fell asleep immediately. And they seemed hardly to have closed their eyes when Glorfindel, who had set himself to watch while they slept, woke them again. The sun had now climbed far into the morning, and the clouds and mists of the night were gone. "Drink this," said Glorfindel to them, pouring for each in turn a little liquor from his silver-studded flask of leather. It was clear as spring water and had no taste, and it did not feel either cool or warm in the mouth, but strength and vigor seemed to flow into all their limbs as they drank it. Eaten after that draught was the stale bread and dried fruit, which was now all they had left, and it still seemed to satisfy their hunger better than many a good breakfast in the Shire had done.
Huh.
First of all, what's Glorfindel got?
Give me more of this water.
Water.
I'm thinking the Samaritan woman at the well.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Okay. And they had rested less than 5 hours when they took up to the road again. Glorfindel still urged them on, and only allowed 2 brief halts during the day's march. And in this way, they covered almost 20 miles before nightfall, and came to a point where the road where the road bent right and ran down towards the bottom of the valley, now making straight for the Brenden. So far, there had been no sign or sound of pursuit that the hobbits could see or hear, but often Glorfindel would halt and listen for a moment, if they lagged behind, and a look of anxiety clouded his face. Once or twice he spoke to Strider in the elf tongue. But, however anxious their guides might be, it was plain that the hobbits could go no further that night. They were stumbling along dizzy with weariness and unable to think of anything but their feet and legs.
Micah, have you ever been in that position? Have you ever been so tired that you were just stumbling around?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what in the world? It's hard. I'm thinking of herding cats here. That's what it would be like. But it's even worse. It's like trying to get sack of potatoes to move, huh?
Yeah.
Is that Sacagawea's cousin, Sack of Potatoes?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
She's getting a coin soon.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Sack of potatoes.
Skipping on down, the road was still running steadily downhill, and there was now places in much grass at either side in which the hobbits walked when they could, to ease their tired feet. And in the late afternoon, they came to a place where the road went suddenly under the dark shadow of tall pine trees, and then plunged into a deep cutting with steep, moist walls of red stone. Echoes ran along as they hurried forward, and there seemed to be a sound of many footfalls following their own.
Oh.
All at once, as if through a gate of light, the road ran out again from the end of the tunnel into the open. And there at the bottom of the sharp incline, they saw before them a long, flat mile. And beyond that, the ford of Rivendell.
Finally!
Hey. On the further side was a steep brown bank, threaded by a winding path. And behind the tall mountains climbed shoulder above shoulder and peak beyond peak into the fading sky.
Well, here we are, scot-free.
That's what you think.
Oh.
But there was still an echo of following feet cutting behind them. In the cutting behind them. A rushing noise as if a wind were rising and pouring through the branches of the pines. In one moment, Glorfindel turned and listened. Then he sprang forward with a loud cry. "Fly!" he called. "Fly! The enemy is upon us!" The white horse leaped forward. The hobbits ran down the slope, and Glorfindel and Strider followed as
the rear guard.
rear guard. Thank you. They were only halfway across the flat when suddenly there was a noise of horses galloping. Out of the gate in the trees they had just left rode a black rider. He reined his horse in and halted, swaying in the saddle. Another followed him, and then another. Then again 2 more. "Ride forward, ride!" cried Glorfindel to Frodo. Skipping down, at once the white horse sprang away and sped like the wind along the last lap of the road. And at the moment the black horses leapt down into the hill in pursuit, and from the riders came a terrible cry, such as Frodo had heard filling the woods with horror in the East Farthing far away.
Oh, do you remember that?
I think so.
On our way to Farmer Maggot's.
Vaguely.
Okay.
Yes.
You could go back and listen to episode number 3 or 4.
Yeah, I could.
Chapter.
Oh, you mean
chapter
the
3? I
listeners.
think 3.
Yeah.
3's Company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. It was answered, and to the dismay of Frodo and his friends, out from the trees and rocks away on the left, 4 other riders came flying. The 2 rode towards Frodo. 2 galloped madly toward the ford to cut off his escape. They seemed to him to run like the wind and to grow swiftly larger and darker as their courses converged with his. Frodo looked back for a moment over his shoulder. He could no longer see his friends. The riders behind were falling back. Even their great steeds were no match for the speed for the white elf horse of Glorfindel.
Yeah.
He looked forward again, and hope faded. There seemed no chance of reaching the ford before he was cut off by the others that laid in ambush. He could see them clearly now, and they appeared to have cast aside their hoods and black cloaks, and they were robed in white and gray. Swords were naked in their pale hands, helms were on their heads, their cold eyes glittered, and they called to him with fell voices. Okay, let's pause for a second.
All right.
Let's talk about this. This is the heavy action sequence because it's just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 step with the action. But it's very cool.
Yes.
It's very...
The descriptive terms...
Yeah.
And them growing in size, but then, seeing them as they had, cast off their hoods and black cloaks, they were robed in white and gray.
Mm-hmm.
I think. What do you think compared to how Peter Jackson portrayed them?
Well, did he always keep them in black, unless Frodo was under the influence of the ring? Okay.
I personally think the writers were too physical. They're supposed to just be nothingness with some robes on.
Yeah.
And they have, in the movie, they have like these gauntlets and stuff, and you think, okay, what's under there, But there's nothing
like corpses
under there.
and,
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, that is a good point because wasn't it back when they had left Farmer Maggot's house? Wasn't it Mary that looked back and saw this shapeless cloak?
Yeah.
At the on the other side of the Brandywine coming across. Yeah. That's a good point, Micah. Okay, but the Brenden, as a storyteller, talk about. I mean, this little descriptive chase to the ford, what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
In terms of what?
Storytelling.
I would say a 9,
Okay.
but only because I don't know what could bring it down, so I'm just leaving that possibility there.
Okay. Okay.
So far as I can see, nothing can bring it down.
Yes.
I'm not going to say it's perfect just yet, but it's daggum good.
The riders behind were falling back. Even their great steeds were no match in speed for the white elf horse of Glorfindel. He looked forward again and hope faded. Oh, boy! He just pulls the rug out from underneath our feet. Hey, look, they're falling behind. You know, this horse of Glorfindel's is awesome, but then he turns and looks forward, and oh, that's dashed. This is the tension. This is high drama. They have been fearful since they left Weathertop, because it was at Weathertop that the Black Riders finally caught up to them.
Yeah.
And then they got away, but they have been, this entire trip to the Ford of Bruinen has been fraught with anxiety.
Yeah.
Everybody feels the anxiety, and even Glorfindel, this powerful elf lord, who was so valiant in his first go-around in life that he was immediately sent back, with the powers almost matching the Maiar. And here are these beings who are kings, right? They were men. They are not Maiar, but they work for probably the most powerful of the Maiar, being Sauron. And Glorfindel is anxious about them and fears them. This is just great drama and great tension all the way up. And it goes back to a couple episodes ago when Strider was telling Sam and the Hobbits, just hope. Keep going. Persevere. If we make it to Elrond's house, there will be comfort. There will be rest. There will be feasting. And it's hard for them to continue on under these circumstances. They need that constant reminder. Right now, things are the bleakest that it has been. This story just keeps getting worse. But if you can make it through this, there will be healing and comfort and feasting.
Fear now filled all Frodo's mind. He thought no longer of his sword. No cry came from him. He shut his eyes and clung to the horse's mane. The wind whistled in his ears, and the bells upon the harness rang wild and shrill.
Wild and shrill. This isn't dainty, beautiful, elven, sounds trinkling. This is the sound of fear and flight.
A breath of deadly cold pierced him like a spear. As with a last spurt, like a flash of white fire, the elf horse, speeding as if on wings, passed right before the face of the foremost rider. Capital R, rider.
Yes.
Frodo heard the splash of water, and it foamed about his feet. He felt the quick heave and surge as the horse left the river and struggled up the stony path. He was climbing the steep bank. He was across the ford. But the pursuers were still close behind. At the top of the bank, the horse halted and turned about, neighing fiercely. There were 9 riders at the water's edge below, and Frodo's spirit quailed.
Here they all are. They're all here.
They're all here now. And Frodo's spirit quailed before the threat of their uplifted faces. He knew nothing that would prevent them from crossing as easily as he had done, and he felt that it was useless to try to escape over the long, certain path from the ford to the edge of Rivendell. If once the riders crossed. In any case, he felt that he was commanded urgently to halt. Hatred again stirred in him, but he no longer had the strength to refuse. And suddenly the foremost rider spurred his horse forward. It checked the water and reared up. With a great effort, Frodo sat upright and brandished his sword. "Go back," he cried. "Go back to the land of Mordor and follow me no more." His voice sounded Here, I gotta say it like he does. His voice sounded thin and shrill in his own ears. Go back.
Go back.
He cried, go back to the land of Mordor and follow me no more. His voice sounded thin and shrill in his own ears. The riders halted, but Frodo had not the power of Bombadil. His enemies laughed at him with a harsh and chilling laughter. Come back, they cried. Come back. To Mordor we will take you. Go back, he whispered. The ring, they cried with deadly voices, and immediately their leader urged his horse forward into the water, followed closely by two others. By Elbereth and Luthien the Fair, said Frodo with a last effort, lifting up his sword, you shall have neither the ring nor me. Then the leader, who was now half across the ford, stood up menacing in his stirrups and raised his hand. Frodo was stricken dumb. He felt his tongue cleave to his mouth and his heart laboring. His sword broke and fell out of his shaking hand, and the elf horse reared and snorted. The foremost of the black horses had almost set a foot upon the shore. At that moment...
Oh, here comes a eucatastrophe.
You better buckle up, Bubba. At that moment, there came a roaring and a rushing, a noise of loud waters rolling many stones. Dimly, Frodo saw the river below him rise, and down along its course there came a plumed cavalry of waves. White flames seemed to Frodo to flicker on their crests, and he half fancied that he saw amid the water white riders upon white horses with frothing manes. The three riders that were still in the midst of the ford were overwhelmed. They disappeared and buried suddenly under angry foam. Those that were behind drew back in dismay. With his last failing senses, Frodo heard cries, and it seemed to him that he saw, beyond the riders that hesitated on the shore, a shining figure of white light. And behind it ran small, shadowy forms with waving flames. That flared red in the gray that was falling over the world.
The gray mist.
Mm-hmm. That gray mist that's in his eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. The black horses were filled with madness, and leaping forward in terror, they bore their riders into the rushing flood. Their piercing cries were drowned in the roaring of the river as it carried them away, and Frodo felt himself falling. And the roaring and confusion seemed to rise and engulf him altogether with his enemies. He heard and saw no more.
No more. Wow.
Oh, man.
What is going on? Frodo.
So it was a 9 before. That's what makes it a 10.
Oh, okay.
When the white riders come in.
Gotcha. And so again, Frodo's wounded by the Black Riders at the dale at the base of Weathertop. They have to get him some help. Strider cannot heal this wound. He can merely treat it. They need to get him to Elrond. In this anxiety-laced journey, every moment is anxiety until they get that little reprieve at the Stone Trolls. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bilbo, for having had this adventure, because now it reminds us, and Frodo especially, that Bilbo was successful on his very first adventure. But that only lasts for a little bit, that comfort, because they got to get Frodo to Elrond, and on the way then they encounter Glorfindel, a very, very powerful elf lord who also does not have the power to cure this wound. We have to get him to Elrond in the last homely. And then we have this, we finally get to the ford of Bruinen, and a eucatastrophe happens. Is this not an ex deus machina?
Keep going. I'm
Okay.
gonna think of a response.
And then Frodo sees this in this river. At the moment there came a roaring and rushing, a noise of loud waters rolling many stones. Dimly, Frodo saw the river below him rise, and down along its course there came a plumed cavalry of waves. White flames seemed to Frodo to flicker on their crests, and he half fancied that he saw amid the water white riders upon white horses with frothing manes. And then, skipping down, with his last failing senses, Frodo heard cries, and it seemed to him that he saw beyond the riders that hesitated on the shore a shining figure of white light. Who is that?
Is it Elrond?
I don't know. We're going to find out.
What you know.
You know, and this is left out of the movies. Micah, what's your recollection of the answers that were given in the theatrical releases? Sorry, I hit my microphone. Because now I have the extended versions and the theatrical versions kind of mixed up in my head.
Were there no white horses in the...
No, there was, but did Gandalf... Was it in the films where he says...
who sent them?
Well, that was my touch. We're going to leave because I don't want to spoil this for Brenden. So let's...
All right.
I can't wait until we find out the answer to this. But we are going to find out. But you know what I'm seeing here, guys?
What are you saying?
The Red Sea.
Hey.
The parting of the Red Sea. And so here are the Israelites that after the Passover, the final plague, the plague... Capital T, capital P, as Tolkien would write it out, huh?
Yep.
The plague. And when finally Pharaoh sent them away, and not only did he send them away, but all the Egyptians were giving them gold and silver treasure and linens and everything that they could. And that's how I love it when you follow the thread throughout the whole Old Testament. But anyway, God had told them, you're going to plunder the Egyptians. Without even fighting. You're going to plunder them without even fighting. And it turns out the way that they did that was when God finally got them released with that final plague, the Egyptians were all, wow, you're God. You know, take this, take all this stuff, and they run away. And then here they are, when Pharaoh snaps, he would say to his right senses, we would say that his heart was hardened once again.
Yeah.
Go and get them. What have we done? What have we done? And when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people, and they said, what is this we have done that we have let Israel go from serving us? That was verse 5 of Exodus chapter 14. And so he makes his chariot ready and took his people with him, and he took 600 select chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he chased after the sons of Israel as the sons of Israel were going out boldly. Then the Egyptians chased after them with all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army. And, you know, I'm seeing the 9 here. This is the assembled army of Sauron. This is his elite guard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In life, they were the greatest kings of men of their time, right? And here they are, and now they have all this amazing power. Well, they get to the sea. Let's skip down in Exodus chapter 14. Let's go down to verse 20. Let's see, verse 19. The angel of God who had been going before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. And there was the cloud, along with the darkness, yet it gave light at night. Thus one did not come near the other all night. But I'm seeing this image of these waves coming down the Brenden Verse 21, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord swept back the sea by a strong east wind all night and turned the sea into dry land, so the rivers were divided. The sons of Israel went through the midst of the sea on the dry land, and the waters were like a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. And as Frodo's thinking, I'm going passing the ford of Bruin in here, the riders are going to be right behind me. Then the Egyptians took up the pursuit, and all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen went in after them into the midst of the sea. At the morning watch, the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud, or we may say the waves with the crests,
Yep.
with white horses, with frothing manes, right? And he looked down and brought the army of the Egyptians into confusion. He caused their chariot wheels to swerve, and he made them drive with difficulty. So the Egyptians said, let us flee from Israel, for the Lord is fighting for them against the Egyptians. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may come back over the Egyptians, over their chariots and their horsemen. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal state at daybreak, while the Egyptians were fleeing right into it. I'm wondering if we're going, if this white figure of light that we see, I wonder if it's going to turn out that we're going to find out that there's a Moses figure and there's a Yahweh figure that's making these things happen. It's a little thing that I'm excited about for the next episode. It's mentioned again in all over throughout the Old Testament. God defeated the Egyptians on his own. He fought the Egyptians, and that's a reminder to the generations that come after. Remember, they're always told our fathers, were brought out of Egypt, and God fought the battles for them, and these things, right? Well, one of the places where it's mentioned is in Psalm 106, and we're just going to read verses 7 through 12. It says, our fathers in Egypt, the writer says, our fathers in Egypt did not understand your wonders. They did not remember your abundant kindness, but rebelled by the sea at the Red Sea. They rebelled in this instance in Exodus chapter 14? Yes, they did. Back in verses 11 and 12, then they, the children of Israel, in their rebellion, then they said to Moses, is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in this wilderness? Why have you dealt with us in this way, bringing us out of Egypt? Is it not the word that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. And this is echoed in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 and 2, where the Apostle Paul writes, for I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. The Red Sea crossing was a baptism into Moses. It's that body of Israel, the body of Moses, baptized into that covenant relationship. So here's the question that I have. What body was Frodo being baptized into in his crossing of the Bruin? Or was this, if he's the priestly figure, was this a baptism like the Lord's? Like Jesus? So like in Luke chapter 3, verses 21 and 22 out of the NASB, now when all the people were baptized, Jesus was also baptized. And while he was praying, heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove, and a voice came out of heaven, you are my beloved Son. In you I am well pleased. I'm well pleased for what? I'm well pleased to have you be the scapegoat. I'm well pleased to have you carry the sin of my people Israel to the cross, to the wilderness. Those are some things to think about. What do you think?
Ask the question again.
No. Oh, what?
Please.
What type of was this a baptism like Paul describes when he's writing to the Corinthians, saying that the children of Israel being taken out of captivity, out of slavery, which is a symbol or a type of sin, and then they were baptized into Moses, into that covenant, that old the law, that body, that was the first Exodus, right?
Okay.
Out of captivity into freedom via Moses. And remember, Moses said, what did he say? The Lord will lift up a prophet unto you that's like me, but better, right? Or is this again, keeping, if we're considering, as Peter Kraft claims, that Frodo is a picture of the priestly office of the Messiah, and the Messiah was baptized in order to fulfill all righteousness, but John's baptism was a baptism of repentance. Did Jesus need to repent of anything, or was this a baptism into his priestly role?
Mission?
Yeah. Big questions, huh?
That is a good question. That's a really good question.
You know,
Micah, what do you think? No, it's okay. I'll take the ball back. I don't know. That's a good.
Or is it neither? And I'm just pulling things out of whole cloth.
Well, I would have to at least ask if Tolkien had intended this scene to be baptism.
I think he had intended it to be an echo. We should
definitely
think back to the Red Sea.
The Red Sea, yeah. Which in that.
You know what?
Okay, maybe we're just getting lost in or maybe I'm just getting lost in technicality. But in a way, the Israelite people were never immersed. It was parted for them.
They were immersed.
They weren't immersed.
They went through the waters.
But the waters were parted.
Hey, okay.
They walked on dry land.
Noah was never in the water.
Oh,
I'm sure you got a couple splashes.
Yeah.
Well, especially Russell Crowe when he was in Noah. That's
Baptism is immersion into.
Yeah.
So are you immersed into? Right. They were. It's. For I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that our fathers were all under the sea. Oh, they were under the sea. Under the sea.
La 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 la.
And under the cloud. And all passed through the sea. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That our fathers were all under the cloud. They were baptized underneath that, right? Immersed. All passed through the sea.
Is baptism not simply a choice, and it doesn't in my opinion, has nothing to do with being dunked in some water? It's simply a choice that you make. It's not the putting off the dirt of the flesh, but an answer to a clear conscience with God. Frodo chose to resist.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I have to think about this one.
I just thought that would be some interesting
that's a good. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. Well, if he was being. Well, then, okay, so then could we say that when we're baptized, we're not only being baptized for the remission of our sins, which would be what the...
no, we're being baptized because of the remission of our sins.
Well, okay. To use Bible language, being baptized for the remission of sins.
Well,
therein
lies the rub.
That's what most translations say, right?
EIS?
The what?
That's that verb, EIS. There's a whole... Should it be translated for, or should it be translated because of?
Does it matter?
No, not... I mean... but it does to some people.
To some people, okay. Well, okay. Well, even
Some people
still,
say that you cannot, if you are not baptized, then your sins have not been washed away. Other people say, no. You are baptized because your sins have been washed away. It's the first act of obedience. It's the first step in faithing.
Okay. So then, yes, what I was saying, we're saying the same thing. Okay. So then my question is, why is it either or?
Oh, yeah, it doesn't have to be.
I think it's more of an and because I'm not I'm not saying that Jesus had to repent of anything, but he was being baptized into a mission.
Yeah. Well,
the same could
all we know
also
is
be
they said that we must do this. It's to fulfill all righteousness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe that righteousness is the mission.
Could be.
In the same way, because the Israelites were being brought out of Egypt, if we're going to go ahead and call the crossing of the Red Sea a type of baptism, then they were leaving something.
The New Testament calls it that.
Okay. So then, yes, since it is,
yes.
So then we can also see baptism as not only a leaving of the past, but an entrance into a new walk.
Man,
that's what I'm trying to get to.
Ding, 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 ding.
So
ding,
it's
ding,
it's not which baptism is this for Frodo? It's both, because he's leaving the 9 riders behind and he's going on to Rivendell.
I told you he was tricksy.
Yes.
I'm just
yes.
We're tracking.
He's going into this place that he's been told we just have to make it, persevere, just make it to the end, run for the prize, strive for the prize. That's what we have seen so far in Book 1 of Fellowship of the Ring. Wow. Listeners, which part of this chapter, Flight to the Ford, stood out to you?
Which part of the whole of Book 1 stood out to you?
Which I think that he led us to this point. This is the end of Book 1 for a reason. The Ford of Brenden.
You see, Frodo was fearfully and wonderfully made. That's all I'm saying.
He was. Okay. I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? I mean, as a recap, Micah, any thoughts so far of Book 1? I just laid out all of mine in the Christian themes and everything. It led to this point, to this crossing of the Red Sea, being baptized into his mission as Jesus was. Yeah.
Which is interesting because a lot of people like to treat baptism like it's an end result.
No, it's a beginning
like
result.
It's a finish line. Hey, as long as we can get them baptized, we're good.
Get them dunked.
Get them dunked. All the way under, too. None of that sprinkling nonsense.
Oh, his nose was...
Oh, no!
Nose was above. No, that's the beginning point.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Out of bondage and out of sin and out of anxiety and all the bad things, he's made it through underneath, and there is healing on the other side of this. Now, of course, we're going to start the process over again, right? There's this continuation of that theme, out of the frying pan and into the fire. Okay, thoughts? Anything? Come on.
I just really hate that the movies did not include Tom Bombadil. I can't say it enough.
Yeah,
and I just can't say it enough. And Glorfindel.
Two
and now, yeah.
And Gildor Radner.
And yes.
Now that is, well, no, it's not. I was going to say it's in the extended version, but it's really not. It's just they do show the elves passing.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Sad. That's what Trump would say. Sad.
Okay.
Fake news.
Good to know.
Fake news.
Fake films.
Yeah, fake.
You know
fake
who
stories.
else would say sad?
Who?
Every person on Earth.
Oh, okay. No.
It is a word that people say.
I mean, this has been a big. Well, we've gone through. This is 17 episodes.
Yeah.
That we have done.
12 chapters.
In 12 chapters.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I
Brenden, are you still?
I think this is the best book of the volume.
Do you?
Don't tell me that.
I mean,
Volume 1.
I'm not going to spoil anything.
Okay.
Right?
I was
I'm just
like,
saying, in my
wait a
opinion.
minute.
Okay, but what do you like about it?
Well, obviously, I like all the Shire stuff.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
I just listen to that to chill out, So.
Oh yeah, I love the Shire. That's brings me great comfort. That's where in Lotro, I spend most of my time in the Shire because it's comforting to me. And that is, that's the great theme, small acts of kindness. What are they wanting to do? They're wanting to, what are the hobbits wanting to do? They're wanting to save the Shire. Gandalf wants to save the Shire. So does Elrond. I mean, Elrond probably, but so does Strider.
Yeah.
I mean, they both have been protecting the Shire for years, preserving their way of life. And it's because of these turn of events that the Dark Lord, that Sauron will even become aware of the Shire.
Yep.
So yeah, there is that loss of innocence. They left the garden.
But even with that, there's Strider. And Strider, and we keep saying it, Strider is basically their Paraclete in the wilderness.
Yes.
And it's almost like, well, we can mourn and be sad that we left the Shire, but if we didn't leave the Shire, then we wouldn't have met Aragorn.
That's right.
So,
that leaving. Yes.
Stepping out, faithing.
Hey, and this is so we have seen on a small scale an exodus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now I'll be honest with you. When I first read this chapter, I didn't think of the Red Sea crossing. That was an afterthought. But I had just read Joshua. So
Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho.
Yes, he did. And I had still fresh on my mind the scene of them carrying the ark into the Jordan.
Yes.
And the Jordan was like at full force, and God still said, "Okay, we'll carry the ark out into the river."
Yeah.
And then that's what made it easy for the people to cross.
Yes.
Maybe it was just that river crossing the river imagery that was.
And what is the capstone of the ark? The mercy seat.
The mercy seat, yeah.
The
propitiation.
Yes, which is where God says, "I will meet you in between those two cherubim on the mercy seat." And what is the mercy seat? Or should I say, who is the mercy seat? Brenden.
Is it Jesus?
It is! Yes! VBS and Bible school, always the correct answer. Jesus.
Candy.
Wonderful things that we're seeing, and these themes that are developed, and that Tolkien, who says, you know what? Yep, I'm a Christian, which can be deduced by my writings.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it. Thank you, Professor. Wow. Anything else?
No, I'm just anxious to get on to Rivendell.
Why?
You need say no more.
Because
Best get a move on. There are still goblins about.
Oh, bother. More mountains?
No, don't you see? The sun is setting in the west, behind the mountains. We're on the other side, to the edge of the land beyond.
We got a review.
We did.
In iTunes.
Awesome.
A 5-star review by one, I don't know how to say this.
Jostali?
Titled A Fun Survey of the Lord of the Rings. Says, I stumbled upon this podcast just a couple of weeks ago. The three hosts do a great job presenting a breakdown of each chapter and how it relates to the Christian faith. I rarely listen to podcasts that are longer than an hour, but the three hosts are so entertaining, I wish the episodes were longer.
Hey.
A must listen for any Tolkien fan.
Well, he got his wish, or they, I guess, got their wish on this episode.
Yeah, we're a little bit longer this episode.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that review and for the encouragement. Those are kind words. Make us feel good, but better yet, it's those 5-star reviews that allow other people to discover the show, and if they're searching in iTunes and or their favorite podcatcher. And so we ask you listeners out there, if you have a moment that you could spare, whatever podcatcher you're listening to, whether it's Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, they changed the name of iTunes. I think it's Apple Podcasts now, or Google Play, Stitcher Radio. Any of your favorite podcatchers, if you could just take a moment to leave us a 5-star review, that just helps others to discover the show. And hopefully they will enjoy it as much as Jostali I think. I don't know. Yeah.
A nice Italian pronunciation.
Yes.
Just Italian.
Okay. Anything from the party tree? Any fun stuff?
Well, yes, Michael. Last week, since we are now live streaming on Twitch.
Yes, twitch.tv/Secret
yes.
Fire Podcast.
Yes, we're live streaming on there. And last week, I got to hang out in the chat room with some of the listeners.
Yes, you were having a grand time.
Yeah, I was. And you can listen back on the other episode and find out how grand of a time I was having.
Yes.
It was disruptive, but we enjoyed
was not
being
disruptive.
yes, but we enjoyed that.
They had a question. Some of them had the question of whether or not we could see, for one, if we could just see Micah at all on the camera, and two, if we could see his screen.
Well, first of all, Micah, turn around, look up at the camera, and wave. No, yeah, no.
Can't lean past my mic.
Yeah,
It's in the way, but I'm here. I'm alive.
Yeah.
he doesn't. He thinks he doesn't want to appear on the camera.
It's not that. It's just the camera's a bit,
Okay,
can't
well,
really pan
we'll
across
change
the three
that
of
then.
us. All right, whatever.
All right.
And in terms of my screen, yeah, I'd like to share it, but I have it in a very windowed mode, and it's very hard to see even for me.
Yeah.
Everything. And we have a lot of lights in here. It would reflect badly, I think, on camera. And it's just too small to see really what's happening, so I don't think it's really worthwhile to have it panned on my screen.
And technically, I could run the game from my computer and show it in the video, but that's not what we're wanting to do.
Yeah.
What is it that we want this show to be? Visual, or
No. We want it to be theater of the mind.
Yeah. What do we mean by theater of the mind?
Just simply the audio. It's strictly, first and foremost, this is a podcast.
An audio podcast.
An audio
yes.
podcast, yeah. And we like the sounds to add atmosphere to it, and we like to whenever we read the passages, we want it to be somewhat dramatized and somewhat
in real time.
In real time, yeah.
Yeah.
And we feel that that showing the actual gameplay on the screen all the time. Now, sometimes we might bring it up just to show like a little clip or whatever. But we feel that if we did that all the time, then it would take away from the experience that we're going for.
The goal that I'm going for is not to have you following me, my character, my elf, who is currently swimming in the Fort of Bruin. I don't want you following him.
Watch out, it's about to flood.
I want you following the Fellowship.
Yeah.
So I present sounds and atmospheric, details as to what the Fellowship is doing at the time. Like, I don't know if it got through, but I made the horse running while Glorfindel's horse was running to the ford. I made him rear up, and then I foolishly dismounted because there was more horse noises later on. But whatever, I try my best to get it.
He's mixmaster on
Yeah.
the fly.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
I try to immerse in the Fellowship's quest instead of what my character is.
And
doing.
that adds to that concept of theater of the mind. Really, you should be listening to this podcast with your earbuds in, or your headphones, your Beats, whatever you're using, because we do broadcast this in stereo. This is one of the few podcasts that are in stereo, and we do that for a reason, because we have stereophonic sounds going on, whether it's the music that we're playing or the sounds from Lotro, and it is immersive. And so you can be sitting there on your commute, whether you're on a subway or a train or a bus or in your car or what have you, and you can see in your own mind. The theater is your mind. The stage is right there in between your ears, and we hope that that's enjoyable for folks, and it seems that it is.
Now, do we need to have that disclaimer? Do not operate heavy machinery while engaging with Secret Fire Podcast.
No, I would say to operate, you must.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you must.
Okay. Okay.
Oh boy, it's all in good fun. Anything else? Anything from the party tree? Nothing.
Nah.
So that was that's a little note that says Mike and his screen.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Pretty good note.
what's coming up on the next episode?
Next time, we're starting book 2
Oh,
with the very next chapter, Many Meetings.
so chapter 1 of book 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring in the Lord of the Rings. Many meetings. Ooh, what's going to happen, do you think?
There's going to be a lot of meetings.
I got a feeling Gandalf's going to show up.
Do you?
It's a feeling.
Just a feeling.
Yeah,
Got a hunch?
I haven't read past anything.
It was in the movie, huh?
It was.
Hey, before we leave, we have party invitations to send out, folks. We didn't get any other feedback other than that review this week, but we want your voicemails, we want your emails, we want your text messages, we want your
telegrams, hand delivered by the Pony Express,
yes,
by Bill Fernie's Pony Express.
There you go. And we know that pony would be happy to be well laden with feedback messages. The Secret Fire podcast is live each Saturday, Lord willing, at about 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time in the GCT Network studio. You can join us for live video on our Twitch page at twitch.tv/Secret Fire Podcast.
And you can join us on the Arkenstone server and Lord of the Rings Online at lotro.com.
To find out more about the Secret Fire Podcast, as well as our other shows, including Finding Christ in Cinema and the Theonauts, visit our main website at gctnetwork.com.
Now, if you want the electronic version of Bill Fernie's Pony, you can send us an email at secretfire@gctnetwork.com. Or you want to call the Hobbit hotline and leave a voice line where Fatty Bulger is standing by, you can call 507-407-4286. That's 507-407-GCTN. Now, let's say you want to tweet at us on Twitter, because when you write with a bird, it's called tweeting.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you. You can do so. You can find us at twitter.com/secretfirecast. But let's just say you want to listen to the good old podcast.
We all do.
You can go to iTunes, you can go to Stitcher, you can go to Google Play Music, TuneIn Radio, or your favorite podcatcher, and search them all for the Secret Fire Podcast.
Yes, and our theme song, Hobbit's Dance, is from the album Memories of Middle-earth by Brobdingnagian Bards. Find out more about them, buy CDs, digital music, T-shirts, painters' hats, caps. Do the kids still wear those? All that good stuff at their website, thebards.net. And until next time, we regret to tell you...
I don't know half of you.
That's not what we regret to tell you.
That this is the end. I'm going away. I'm leaving. Now, goodbye.
Goodbye!
Bye! Yeah, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button, Gandalf.
Sorry.
Who is that odd little fellow?
That's Micah.
Get out of here.
Little.
And there you go.
All right.
Yes. And we shall stop streaming. Thank you for tuning in. If you've watched this video on twitch.tv/Secret Fire Podcast, get over and subscribe to the podcast and never miss an episode.
Miss a beat.
Oh, hey, and if you also look on our videos, our past videos, it only shows like 2 at a time. I think they dump them off. I need to get this hooked up to our YouTube channel and export them over there. But on the last day of the summer festival, and I kept saying Questival, so I coined a new term, Micah. The Questival, Summer Questival. I streamed here from Lotro, and you actually can see the screen in that one. And so, yeah, just watch that video. That was kind of fun. There you go. We'll talk to you next time.
All right.